They said move your car. So I parked my truck right across their gate. Imagine a quiet suburb turned chaotic, when one man's petty revenge against a power-hungry HOA spirals into a neighborhood showdown. This is a tale of defiance, cunning, and pure chaos. Stick around to see how it unfolds. If you love wild HOA drama, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and ring the bell for more crazy neighborhood stories. Let's dive into the chaos. The summer sun beat down on the manicured lawns of Willow Creek, a suburban enclave where every blade of grass seemed to bow to the HOA's iron rule. Ethan Caldwell, a rugged contractor in his late 30s, had lived here for 3 years, his modest ranch-style home a stark contrast to the cookie-cutter mansions around him. His pickup truck, a battered but reliable beast, was his pride and joy, often parked in his driveway, its faded paint and toolbox a sore spot for the HOA board. The trouble began with a crisp letter taped to his truck's windshield one humid morning, demanding he move it to the garage because it disrupted the neighborhood's aesthetic. Ethan, a man who valued his freedom over petty regulations, ignored it. The HOA, led by Margaret Hensley, a self-appointed guardian of Willow Creek's pristine image, didn't take kindly to defiance. Margaret, with her perfectly coiffed hair and clipboard always at the ready, was known for her relentless enforcement of rules, from fining residents for unapproved mailbox colors to measuring lawn heights with a ruler. Ethan's truck, a symbol of his blue-collar roots, was her latest target. The letter was followed by a second, then a third, each more threatening, citing fines and potential towing. Ethan, unbothered, left the truck where it was, its tires firmly planted on his property. But when Margaret escalated, posting a notice on the community board accusing him of lowering property values, Ethan's patience snapped. He wasn't one for confrontation, but he wasn't about to let a nosy board dictate his life. Late one evening, as the neighborhood slept, Ethan made his move. He drove his truck to the entrance of Willow Creek's gated community, where Margaret's pristine home stood like a sentinel. With deliberate precision, he parked the truck horizontally across the gate, blocking the only entrance and exit. The next morning, chaos erupted. Residents couldn't leave for work, delivery trucks honked in frustration, and Margaret, in her floral robe, stormed out, her face redder than the roses in her garden. Ethan watched from his porch, sipping coffee as the HOA's perfect order crumbled. The truck, too heavy for a standard tow, sat like a monument to his rebellion. Margaret called a tow company, but Ethan had ensured the truck's brakes were locked and the keys hidden. By noon, the neighborhood was a circus, residents arguing, Margaret shouting into her phone, and Ethan calmly reading a book on his lawn. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, but with the gate blocked, members struggled to gather. Ethan's act wasn't just petty, it was a calculated strike against Margaret's tyranny. As the day wore on, social media buzzed with photos of the truck, hashtags like Town Willow Creek Rebel trending locally. Ethan hadn't planned for this to become a spectacle, but he wasn't complaining. By dusk, the tow company admitted defeat, unable to move the truck without risking damage. Margaret, humiliated, vowed to make Ethan pay, but he simply waved from his porch, unfazed. The neighborhood was divided. Some saw Ethan as a hero, others a troublemaker. As night fell, the truck remained, a silent challenge to the HOA's authority, and whispers of retaliation began to circulate. The standoff at Willow Creek's gate stretched into the second day, and the neighborhood's polished facade cracked further. Ethan's truck, still sprawled across the entrance, became a local legend, drawing curious onlookers from nearby subdivisions. Margaret, now the laughingstock of her own domain, doubled down. She rallied the HOA board, a group of retirees and busybodies who shared her obsession with control, to draft a legal notice threatening Ethan with a lawsuit. The notice slipped under his door at dawn, demanded he remove the truck or face thousands in fines and legal fees. Ethan, unfazed, tossed it into a drawer with the others. He'd checked the HOA bylaws. His truck was on public property, not technically violating any rule. The gate, while part of the community, sat on a county easement, a loophole Margaret hadn't anticipated. Ethan's knowledge of local regulations, honed from years navigating construction permits, gave him an edge. Meanwhile, the neighborhood's frustration grew. Parents missed school drop-offs, commuters were late to work, and delivery drivers abandoned their routes. Margaret, desperate to regain control, organized a petition to have Ethan evicted, canvassing door to door with her clipboard, her voice dripping with righteous indignation. Some residents signed, annoyed by the inconvenience, but others, fed up with the HOA's overreach, refused. A quiet faction began to form, residents who'd long resented Margaret's rules but lacked the nerve to challenge her. Ethan, meanwhile, kept his routine, working on job sites by day, returning to sip beer on his porch by evening, the truck unmoved. Social media amplified the drama, with local influencers filming the scene, dubbing Ethan the truck guy. Comments poured in, some praising his defiance, others calling him selfish. Margaret, humiliated by the attention, hired a private tow company, but Ethan had anticipated this. He'd parked a second vehicle, an old trailer, strategically behind the truck, creating a near-impenetrable blockade. The tow driver, after an hour of futile attempts, left in frustration. By the third day, the HOA's threats escalated. Margaret, now visibly frazzled, her hair less perfect, announced a special assessment to cover legal costs, infuriating residents already tired of her fees. Ethan, sensing the tide turning, began quietly rallying support. He didn't speak much, but his actions did. Neighbors who'd once avoided him now stopped by, sharing their own HOA horror stories, fines for kids' chalk drawings, bans on vegetable gardens. Ethan listened, nodding, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Margaret's unraveling. The neighborhood was splitting into camps, those loyal to the HOA's order and those craving rebellion. As the sun set on the third day, Margaret stood by the gate staring at the truck, her hands trembling with rage. Ethan, from his porch, raised his beer in a mock toast. The battle lines were drawn, and the next move would determine who'd blink first. By the fourth day, Willow Creek was a pressure cooker. Ethan's truck, now adorned with a cheeky no parking sticker slapped on by an anonymous supporter, remained the neighborhood's immovable centerpiece. Margaret's campaign against Ethan intensified, but her grip was slipping. The HOA board, once her loyal minions, began to fracture. Two members, tired of the drama and the mounting legal bills, suggested negotiating with Ethan, but Margaret shot them down, her voice shrill. She'd hired a lawyer, a slick attorney from downtown who arrived in a suit that screamed overpriced. He served Ethan with a cease and desist letter, claiming the truck violated community standards and public safety. Ethan, still unfazed, handed the letter to his own lawyer, a friend from his contracting days who worked pro bono. The lawyer confirmed Ethan's loophole. The county easement meant the HOA had no jurisdiction over the gate's access point. Margaret's legal threats were a bluff, and Ethan called it. Meanwhile, the neighborhood's rebellion grew. A group of residents, calling themselves the Willow Creek Renegades, started a group chat to coordinate support for Ethan. They shared stories of Margaret's overreach, finding a widow for a faded mailbox, threatening a family for a basketball hoop. The renegades began subtle acts of defiance. One left a lawn gnome in an unapproved spot. Another painted their fence a shade off the HOA's color palette. Ethan, though not officially part of the group, became their silent hero. The truck, now a symbol of resistance, drew more attention. Local news vans parked nearby, filming segments about the Willow Creek standoff. Margaret, desperate to save face, organized a community meeting at the clubhouse, but with the gate blocked, attendance was sparse. She live-streamed it instead, ranting about Ethan's anarchy, but her audience was dwindling. Residents were tired of her tirades, and the renegades crashed the stream with mocking comments. Ethan, meanwhile, kept his cool, working on a new job site by day, returning to his porch by night. He'd added a small flag to his truck, a tiny American flag, a nod to his belief in personal freedom. The gesture infuriated Margaret, who saw it as a mockery of her authority. By the fifth day, the HOA's funds were hemorrhaging, legal fees, tow attempts, and now a PR nightmare. Margaret's lawyer advised settling, but she refused, her pride too wounded. Ethan, sensing victory, began planning his next move, something that would push Margaret to the breaking point. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the truck stood firm, and the renegades whispered about a bigger plan, one that would shake Willow Creek to its core. Generate an ultra-realistic, cinematic 8K HDR video sequence in the style of a tense neighborhood siege drama, lasting 90 seconds, using VO3. Continue seamlessly from the gate blockade in Willow Creek. Open with time-lapse of the second dawn breaking over the unmoving truck, dew glistening on its toolbox and hyper-detailed HDR textures. Center Ethan Caldwell, the 38-year-old rugged contractor with his muscular frame, Short, dark, tousled hair, stubble-shadowed jaw in jeans and flannel, casually tossing a threatening HOA lawsuit notice into a drawer with a dismissive flick of his calloused hands. Contrast with Margaret Hensley, 55, her blonde bob slightly disheveled for the first time. Sharp features twisted in rage, green eyes blazing as she canvasses doors in her floral dress and clipboard, her thin lips pursed in forced smiles that crack into snarls. Depict growing resident frustration through montage, parents pacing with kids' backpacks, commuters checking watches under overcast skies, a petition clipboard filling with reluctant signatures. Show Ethan's edge with a clever reveal. He maneuvers an old rusty trailer behind the truck at dusk, chains clinking in slow motion, his blue eyes glinting with cunning. Amplify division with split screen, loyalists glaring from windows, rebels nodding approval to Ethan on his porch beer in hand, his broad chest steady. Incorporate viral social media overlays with modern Willow Creek Rebel hashtags exploding in pixel-perfect animations. Employ cinematic techniques like rack focus shifts from frustrated faces to the truck's unyielding tires, volumetric God rays piercing morning fog for immersive depth, and a pulsing synth building dread, maintaining Ethan's cool, grounded demeanor, and Margaret's unraveling poise to sustain viewer investment through escalating pettiness and whispers of alliance forming.